What's going on, everybody? It's Barmine from Barmine Tech, and today we're doing a little bit of a different video. It's actually a little late to do it, but I'm going to do what I'm starting my home lab with in 2023. I know it's February and I missed the month, but we were working on other projects and I figured why not circle back to this now. So I started my home lab probably about 3 years ago. It was when I was finishing up with my bachelor's degree and I knew that I needed to work on projects. It was during the pandemic, so I wasn't able to really get internships, so I figured let me start working on some home projects so I can at least have something to put on my resume to show I have some skills. I did do internships prior, but I didn't have anything more in my field of what I was studying at the time, so I was just trying to do some projects around my house so I could kind of pad my resume and be like, hey, I have an idea what I was doing. So that's how I really got into home labbing. So I started off small. I started off with Raspberry Pis. They were great. I have a micro center by my school. It's about 30 minutes from my house. This is one of my Pi Zeros I have. But I started off with Raspberry Pis, and they were great because you can go get a Pi 3 for 30 bucks. You get a little SD card and maybe a couple peripherals you might need, and you had the perfect mini computer to run on what you wanted to do. And I messed around with stuff. I set up Piehole, I made a Twitter bot. I did some funny stuff just to mess around with. But it gave me the basic Linux skills that I needed to get into home labbing and to understand what I was doing. And by starting off there, it really helped my Linux skills, I'll say, because I was breaking stuff. I didn't really understand anything I was doing. So I was forced to learn it because I knew I had to, I wanted to. And that's what really probably pushed me to get where I am now, besides, working with Linux every day. But that's regardless. But Raspberry Pis were how I started, and they were great. But now I've grown into larger stuff, and I'm going to give you a little look around of my servers and what I host off of them and what I do with them and all that good stuff. So let's just get started with it. So to start, we're going to look at my main server. This was something I actually built back in July, early August, and I talked to some coworkers who really convinced me to finally pull the plug and move off my Raspberry Pis and build my own server, so I did. And I looked into it for a long time of what I wanted to build, and I got a lot of advice from my coworkers, and this is what we ended up doing. Actually, this is the wrong one. This is what we're talking about. So, this is my main server. I'm running all older stuff. It's a lot of X79 gear. This build was really inspired by, I was starting to watch a lot of Craft Computing at the time. He has a great channel, and the equipment that he was using was really what pushed me to get the equipment I want. I ended up going with, and then I discussed it with my coworkers a lot, and they advised me. So I am running older equipment, and I learned that very fast that it's old, it's power hungry, and it's not really the best, but it was a really good spot for me to start for what I wanted to spend. So I have two Xeon chips. They're 2670s, that 2.6. So I have two of them in there. So there are two 8-core CPUs, and then I have about 72 gigs of RAM in there, and that works out really good because I'm able to host a lot of my VMs. I have probably about 5 hard drives in this machine. They're all either smaller SSDs, and then I do have one 8TB Barracuda drive. I think it's a Seagate drive I put in there. I don't remember. Whatever was on sale at Micro Center. It might have been a WD drive, but it's an 8TB, and I use that for Plex. I'll just go down the line. So I have my Plex VM. This was a typo when I made it, but it's an Open Media Vault. I use this to host the network share. This is before I knew about the Samba container, and I would much rather use the Samba container than Open Media Vault. It's a good program, but it's just a little too buggy when I do have issues with it. They're not all the time, but when they are, it's really a pain to get it working the right way again. I have a VM for my job. I have a Windows 11 VM that I actually started as just to kind of learn about it and see if I'd like Windows 11, and it turned out that I really do enjoy Windows 11. There's an add-on you could add to it to kind of make it so it sucks less. So instead of having that middle bar, this is actually my Windows 11 VM, but instead of having that middle bar, you can make it so it's more like Windows 10. And it gives you still the same options and all that stuff, but it just moves everything back, and you can change the graphics and stuff like that. So honestly, I really like Windows 11. If you ever heard about TDAR, it was a transcoder that you could use to try to transcode your files, your media files, and cut down some space. I messed around with it, and that was really a more challenging project that I don't really know if it was worth it. I'm currently using the Seed Labs for school, so we're talking. I have a VM for that, so I could just go into that and access it. I host a Minecraft server of this machine, but these are my VMs that I currently run. It's a really simple machine. I used to run, in the beginning when I first started doing stuff, I was running my Docker off this machine too, and it was just sucking out too much resources. So I actually built another little server with old hardware I had. So I have a simple 4-core i5. This was actually my first PC, so this is my PC that I got probably about 8 years ago, and it's a 4-core i5 with 8 gigs of RAM, and it's absolutely perfect for what I use for my Portainer and Docker setup. So this machine hosts about 20, 25 or 30 containers now, and it works great. The only thing I did add was a 1 gig Ethernet card into it because this motherboard's 8 years old, so it had a fast Ethernet card. So that was really bottlenecking me, so I did change that. But we'll go into my Portainer containers that I'm hosting, and so you can see I have a bunch of different stacks. And we're going to look on the local one because this is actually the main one that I work with. So if I come to my containers, I have a bunch of different ones. So I have Caliber, Deluge, I have stuff that I don't use in here. So I have Flame, I have Jacket, Lazy Librarian. That was a project I was trying to work on to organize books for e-readers. Let's see, I have Piehole, of course. I have my Ombi. So I have my request server for Plex. We just talked about that in the last video. I have the Nginx proxy manager. We use that in the Bitwarden video. Of course, Portainer. We have the R's for Plex. There's Snippetbox, which we haven't talked about, but we might in the future. I have the speed test. So this is actually a really cool container that I haven't talked about yet, but it can help you log your network speed and see what's going on. So it's just a quick overview. So this gives you a time period and it shows you when your network drops off and different stuff. Very helpful container if you're trying to learn about, but try to keep track of what's going on with your internet. We have the Vault Warden container that's not really configured. We have the WireGuard server, super helpful container. There's the Vault Warden container, Uptime Kuma, Tautuli, all really helpful containers that I've hosted over the time. If you remember, we did the NOC video, so I do have a NOC, and if I come into the containers, we have Portainer, of course, and we have Uptime Kuma. So this comes back to, this is off my VPS that I got. So if you remember the $20 server that we talked about a couple months ago, and I ran Uptime Kuma on this. It has WireGuard in here, so it VPNs back to my house, and it can monitor all my network devices that I want it to. So this is really helpful if I'm out of the house. I could be out with friends or I could be at work, and if my internet goes out of my house or one of my servers or services go down, Uptime Kuma sends me the alert. I get it right through Discord and it lets me know, so it's really nice. It's also a good way to know if you have a power outage, because you could usually judge if everything's out. It's either your internet or you have a power outage. So nice little trick that I learned about Uptime Kuma. We of course we also run a Pi NAS. So this is off one of my Raspberry Pis that I have, and it's a simple Samba container off a Raspberry Pi 3B. I have Docker and Portainer, and then I have an external hard drive plugged into there, and I just use the Samba container to make myself a NAS. So what I really use this container the most for is if I'm at work or I'm outside of my house and I'm still on one of my machines. I use this container to transfer my data back and forth so it's accessible. So like school, I did this often. I would have my NAS for when I was at school, and I would be able to host my NAS in my house, and then when I'm at school, I'm able to have the file still accessible. So I wanted to get off depending on like Google Drive or other stuff. Of course, it's free for students, but I wanted to use my own service, so I made my own little NAS container of a Raspberry Pi. Super simple, and it was a nice little project to work on. It worked out really good, so I used that. The final one with the Portainer setup is, of course, the Barmine tech server, and you guys have seen all the videos on all this stuff. So it has Ombi, Portainer, the R's, we have Samba in here, and we have Tatuli. So this is all really the Plex build that we've been talking about. I've deleted some of these over time from the videos, but this is all from the Plex series that we've been working on. So here's my flame dashboard, and it's all configured up. We talked about this a little bit in the video, but I've changed it to some of the settings that I like, and I've just grabbed my icons and made shortcuts for the stuff that I use often enough. I have some shortcuts for school, and we'll go through there. Another service that I don't host off a server, but I do host off another Raspberry Pi is Octoprint. I use Octoprint on my 3D printer, and it is super convenient, especially after you integrate like a webcam with it. So you can see there's my printer right there, and then you put Octolapse in there, and you could actually get time lapse of your prints. So Octoprint's definitely a cool one. I know it's on the app templates for Portain or through NovaSpirit, but that will only really work if you either have a wireless connection back to your printer serially, or you have your printer local enough to your server that you can use the serial cable and plug it back in. I know there's a way you can make a wireless connection with like a Raspberry Pi Zero and get it back, but I'm not too familiar with that setup. But I know it can be done, so if you want to look into it and try to use the Docker container that way, you can. But this is Octoprint. Super convenient. If you have a 3D printer, you should definitely check it out. And you don't need to host it off a Raspberry Pi. You can host it off of other mini boards, or even if you have an older computer you don't use, or however you might want to do it. But Octoprint's definitely the way to go if you have a 3D printer. And we, of course, are running Piehole. We talked about Piehole in one of our first videos. It was one of our first projects we set up, and this is my main Piehole that I run in my house. So you can see I have a ton of domains on my block list, and it does do a great job blocking stuff. I do run into issues every now and then of ads I want to click on, or certain things do get blocked out, or certain links like on Google when you're shopping, but it's okay, you work around it. We could add whitelists, and we could work through there. So this is just a quick overview of my Piehole. I'm thinking we might do a more advanced setup with Piehole in the future to go over some more settings beyond the basic ones that we showed in that first video, or revisit it. So we might work on that in the future. So that's it. That's everything I host in my home lab. I'll throw in some pictures maybe of my actual main server that I run. So I'll throw a couple pictures in here. It's really messy, so don't judge me. I fit a lot of stuff into a little bit of case. I actually run an eATX case, and the wire management on it just didn't work, so please don't bash me in the comments. I know, it's bad, but it works. It's going to get revisited in the future. I might move it over to a different enclosure, or more of a rack-mounted case. I don't know yet, but we'll see. But I'm going to put pictures in, and you can see what my mess of my first server was. For my other server, it's super simple. I can throw a picture in there, but it's nothing fancy. It's a little micro ATX board, and it works really good. The Barmine tech server, you guys know, is an HP Pro Desk or an Elite Desk that I scored off eBay for like 50 bucks. Great deal. But these are all my projects that I've gotten, and it just spans to be further and further along, and it's been great because the projects that I work at home with help me develop my skills for work, or the skills that I learn at work I bring right back home and I work on my projects. So my Linux skills have grown hugely. I went from pretty much never using Linux or using it just every now and then to configure a Raspberry Pi to pretty much every day, whether I'm working on the Minecraft server that I built off of Ubuntu, which we might talk about in the future and do a video on that, or if I'm working on Piehole or my Docker containers, or even in the root of proxmox because it's a Debian base. So these skills that you work in your home lab are great, and they 100% show it when you do get a job, or if you already are in industry working, and having those skills on your resume do help. I know they're not huge projects, but when you're getting interviewed and somebody goes, well, what's this project you're working on, and you could just talk about it and be like, this does this. Like, if you host a proxmox server, throw it on your resume. You don't need to go into detail about all your stuff you host off of it, but you could say, I host a proxmox server, I host services off of it, I host a couple VMs off of it, and whatever you do. And it just shows that you have those skills, and that's what homelab did for me. The industry is very open right now with jobs, but it's very saturated with people getting out of college and employers just having really high demands. So building those skills in your home lab is crucial if you really want to try to land that job. But that's enough of my rant, and this is what I host in my home lab. This is what we're starting 2023 with, and we're going to circle back to this at the end of 2023 and see what we changed, and hopefully it'll be cool. Hopefully we'll have big changes, or maybe we won't. I don't know. We'll see. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.